It had been our plan to do a deep dive into the Zagreb victory, but instead we're going to have to pivot and talk about Kieran Tierney signing a pre-agreement. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name is Elliot Smith, Blockman Twitter, Gunner. That's your transfer news for today. Kieran Tierney, pre-agreement with Celtic. I mean, what do you want me to do? You want me to magic you up some transfer rumors? You want me to go to the bottom, the depths of the social media space and find you a transfer rumor? Fine. Benjamin Sesko and Victor Gyokeres had their DNA stolen. It was mixed together in a lab. They have produced a footballer who is signing at the end of this window with a hybrid of the qualities of Benjamin Sesko and Victor Gyokeres. There. Are you happy? That's your transfer rumor. It's the best I could do, literally. There's not much out there. We are going to talk about the Zagreb victory. We are going to talk maybe a bit about the Wolves game coming up, certainly about transfers as they continue to at least be the thing people are concerned about and chatting about. I will tell you that Tim and I did a countdown episode, 10 topics facing the Arsenal. We covered whether Arsenal would win the Premier League, so you're probably going to want to know that. That's pretty important. We covered who we're going to sign, if anyone. Should it be Matthias Cunha? Should it be someone else? We talked about Champions League possibilities and all kinds of good things like that. So who will be leaving in the summer? We've got more scouting videos out. I think we're going to do another scouting video tomorrow. So there's a lot going on. We did an instant reaction last night that you can definitely not listen to because the people didn't like it. That's right. Sometimes they're duds. I hate to say it. We did get some negative feedback that perhaps I was not sufficiently joyous after a 3-0 victory in the Champions League. It might have been a bit worn out by the excess of football that was on show. But you know what? To each their own. We are all entitled to our own interpretation of our own reality, and I am here to help interpret your reality with Phil Costa. Hello, Phil Costa.
Hello, Elliot. How are we doing?
Yeah, good. Spreading the minutes around this week, as you need to do when the football comes thick and fast. So Clive's had a bit of a busy week out of the house, so not able to record much. He was on the instant reaction last night, and we will be doing something tomorrow. Tim was on the countdown. I believe we had him on the main pod earlier this week. So we're mixing up the minutes. Paul is away this week. He'll be back next week, but I promise you we will have Clive and Tim and Paul on main pods in the very near future. And in fact, maybe we'll try to do an all-together group pod of everybody, because I know those have been sparse and hard to come by. The schedule has been really, really tricky this year for us as humans, and then also when you add in the football. So a little bit complex, which actually leads to an interesting starting point. Phil, just as an entry point for this game, I took a note from Andy Kelly, who is basically a historian on Arsenal Football Club. And he said, this is 5 home games in 16 days. That hasn't happened since the 1890s. You and I aren't the ones going, but certainly if you had to race out of work or buy a train ticket and spend the money to go, and not just the cost of the tickets, right? This was, I think, category B. There was a rumor that people were trying to put it on the ticket exchange, not having a lot of luck. Do you feel like it's a lot of football right now? Like, are you feeling any fatigue, or are you just in that mindset of more, let's go, let's kick off again today, let's kick off tomorrow?
No, it's definitely felt like a lot of football. I've been on record on this podcast on with Andrew a couple of times that I felt quite drained by this season, to be honest, especially because of how some of our matches have been played, some of the decisions that have gone against us, the constant stream of injuries. I've just felt quite overwhelmed and struggling to engage myself with a lot of the games. And it's, usually it can be a good thing to get one every 2 or 3 days. If you have a bad result on Saturday, Tuesday gives you an opportunity to right that wrong. But I've just been like, enough. And I think especially in the English game where you don't have a winter break, they put more football on. So it's it's non-stop. And especially when you work in football, there's just like stuff to think about and watch and remember. And it's a very first world problem because I'm so lucky to do it. But there is definitely an oversaturation of football at the moment. And honestly, yesterday was such a welcome change of pace to watching games anxious and nervous and worried, because we just strolled about. I mean, it was so easy. And Dinamo Zagreb were not good, unfortunately for them. So, but fortunately for us, they presented a much easier challenge than we've had in recent weeks.
Yeah, they're hardmen fans throwing cups and missiles at players at corner kicks, while their hardmen players went down pretending their face had been hit to try to win possession
Just
of the
the
ball.
5 times in that first half, yes.
Yes, a bit incongruous. So it is interesting, right? I could see both sides of the coin. There are some people that I think could have found this to be sort of a low quality, low intensity game and couldn't connect to it. There is the alternative view, your point though, which is like after playing Unai's Villa and the derby and a cup tie and City's coming up, like to have a game that you're probably going to win and that doesn't have huge stakes and that isn't emotionally pitched and isn't, oh my God, if we don't win this, we're out of the title race. If we win it, we're back in the title race. Like it is a nice break, because I do think psychologically last season was exhausting. Then you had the Euros, which especially if you're an England supporter, like continued to be psychologically exhausting, and then right into a very psychologically exhausting season where we just haven't had a lot of serenity. There hasn't been that like 3-week period where the squad is fit, we're winning games, they're kind of comfortable, and there's no midweek, and so there's time to think about it. It's just been relentless. And I think it was Frankie de Jong who made the point, and I think this is an interesting one. It's one that I probably haven't focused on enough. He talked about the excess of football, and he said it isn't just about players getting injured. He said it's about the quality of the football, and he said something that I admit I probably didn't think about, which is, he said, when you're playing this frequently, there just isn't enough training time. So you're mostly resting, recovering, going through fitness tests, and then playing the next game. And the less you train, obviously, the less coordination there is. If there are injuries, that's even less coordination. And so just the overall synchronicity of the games can get lost a little bit, which can lead to lower performance levels. But all in all, I mean, a 3-0 in the Champions League, 2.2 expected goals to 0.1. It is kind of a nice change where Arsenal dominate the opposition. The data says we dominate the opposition, but guess what? The scoreline does too. This was opposition that, even when we did try to shoot ourselves in the foot a bit with the Kibior giveaway or the Raya giveaway, didn't have the quality to take advantage. If this was a Premier League game, they would have gotten 3 goals from our 2 errors. You know what I mean? It feels a bit like that season. So I'm happy for it. I'm happy for a game where we got to not be at an emotional fever pitch. We got to play and win comfortably. Some guys who need goals or could certainly benefit from the lift of goals were able to get them. And that leads, I want to look at the Champions League overall first before we get into the minutiae of the game. And we'll talk transfers a little down the line. We are now essentially locked into the top 8. Okay. The reason I say essentially is, in theory, if we were to lose to Girona, and I think Villa are the closest, if they were to beat Celtic and they won by enough goals and we lost by enough goals to overturn an 8-goal difference, we could fall to 9th. As long as we don't give up 8 goals of difference to Villa and lose, then we are through in the top 8. And that means we don't face that sort of punishment round that's coming. I mean, the Champions League's kind of interesting, Phil. Like, City draw against Bruges at home and they're out. They have to win that game. PSG are clinging on by a fingernail. It looks like Real Madrid now are easing their way more into the middle of the pack, but it has thrown up some interesting fixtures. I think people are pretty split on what they think about this format. So where are you with it so far?
I think it took me a little while to get my head around everything, purely because it's so new. We obviously got used to the old format with just 4 teams in a group, and then the top 2 go through and you kind of work it through from there. But the first few games, I had a struggle again to connect with them, because there wasn't a huge amount of jeopardy, because I knew that further down the line, we would have an opportunity to kind of rectify any bad results, any defeats, any draws, because we had some easy games at home, or easier games at home, that we could kind of fix afterwards. But
yeah,
when we drew against Atalanta, I was just kind of like, well, it's a hard place to go, but we'll win against Shakhtar and Monaco at home. So I think in terms of the amount of games, I probably could have done without the extra 2. I think the team could have done without the extra 2, but ultimately I think it's been something different, where the Champions League was maybe getting a little bit monotonous in the last few seasons. It's given people a chance to play different teams. We've seen, again, Real Madrid struggling a bit, Juventus struggling a bit, City, PSG all struggling, Benfica. And then again, if you look at the top 8, obviously it's kind of names that we know, but Atalanta are there, Leverkusen are at the top, Villa in 9th, Monaco 10th, Feyenoord 11th. So there is a redeeming factor in that sort of sense, in that teams who aren't typically near the top can be there. So
yeah,
I don't know. I'm still getting my head around it, but I haven't minded seeing something a bit different, because even for me, the Champions League was just a bit like, same teams playing the same people, blah, blah, blah. So I've enjoyed it.
Do you think us being third in it, seeing some of the struggles of other teams, like, I think there are going to be people who feel Arsenal are underperforming this season. And you zoom out and you say, for all the injuries, for all the ref issues, you could say for recruitment problems too, and maybe one or other issues that you could be rightly upset about. We are second in the most competitive, difficult league in the world, and we are third in the Champions League with only Barca and Liverpool above us. Is it a chance to just be a gentle reminder as we ease 3-0 past, European competition at home? A gentle reminder to keep all things in perspective for the people who maybe have found themselves quite upset and understandably, or maybe upset that we're not pulling the trigger on transfers right now, but just a bit of perspective, perhaps?
For sure. I mean, there's no easy game in Europe, as you can see now. And I think we had a few difficult ones. Atalanta away is tough. Inter away is also difficult. But I saw enough in our home fixtures to kind of give us a bit of leeway. I thought the Sporting result was excellent. I know they were having a bit of a transition period at that moment with Amorim leaving and a couple of people coming in. But overall, I think we've done really well. And the way I look at it is, yes, it's really disappointing to go out of the FA Cup. Yes, it was super disappointing to lose at home to Newcastle in the Carabao Cup. But our squad, purely in terms of numbers, because of the injuries that we've suffered, is not ready to compete on four fronts. And if you told me which two competitions would you rather compete in, the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup, or the Premier League and the Champions League, I'd much rather compete in the latter two. So, for me, I was able to kind of compartmentalize that challenge and just say, look, we've been dealt a really terrible hand. Where would I rather be? Second in the Premier League and third in the Champions League at the end of January? Yes, I would absolutely rather be there. So we've done well to kind of come through a few bumps in November and January to kind of see the sunshine now.
And we've been a bit lucky too, because they front-loaded our hard fixtures, which I think we all bemoaned, not just in the Champions League, but in the Premier League. And so we were facing, Inter away and PSG followed by City away. Mm-hmm. I mean, it felt really relentless. The upshot of it is now when we have a fully depleted and shagged out team, we get a Zagreb at home with a chance to lock up top 8. And now the Girona game functionally does not matter. I mean, if you can avoid losing 8 goals of goal difference, it doesn't matter. And that gives Mikel a really good opportunity. Look, he's not going to play the kids in a Champions League tie. Liverpool had a pretty straightforward Champions League tie this week that didn't have a ton riding on it. And they played Salah and Van Dijk 90 minutes. So, not that I'm saying Slot is the example of what the best manager in the world does. I think he's fine. My point is just the way we think rotation should happen and the way rotation actually happens is often not aligned. So we can get into the match, and we'll just sort of start with the lineup just quickly, because we did get Kiwior at center back. Miles Lewis-Skelly apparently felt something in his knees going for a scan. Mikel wasn't talking about it like he was super worried. The good news is Calafiori was on the bench, so that means that, our one in, one out policy continues, which is actually better than what we had before, which was a none in, one out policy. Kiwior at center back was an interesting chance to sort of, I think, for people compare psychologically versus what Mikel had done at the weekend, where he put Timber at center back and moved Partey over there. Jorginho came in. Ethan was back on the bench. Thoughts on how he lined up? I mean, outside of the Kiwior thing, really was mostly enforced lineup. I mean, that's kind of the territory we're in right now.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm glad he put Kiwior back in, just because I wanted to see something different from Thomas Partey at right back. And this is not me saying that Partey is killing our season, but I just don't get on with him in that position, purely because him being there is fine. It's just what him being there means for everybody else. I think the right winger gets isolated. I think he steps on the centre-back's toes a bit. I don't think he's able to demonstrate his ability to progress the ball in that area so much. So I was just happy to see something different. And also, if you can't play Jakub Kiwior against Dinamo Zagreb at home, then what is the point of him even being here? So yeah, it was a nice opportunity to come in for him. I think it was a nice option for Arteta to lean on when we've had a couple of injuries, a few heavy legs. So yeah, I was fine with it. I like Jorginho coming back into the team as well. He's always good for these kind of days and occasions. Just frees up people in the middle. He's good at those second balls. He can progress the ball. So I didn't really have an issue with any of the team, to be honest. The front three sort of picked itself. Maybe you could say Trossard came in or could have come in, but I think he earned a rest as well, a bit of a rest if we might need him for the weekend. So fine. Team was absolutely fine. Again, I wasn't super worried about Dinamo Zagreb, they hadn't played in a long time. They were under a new manager. They're not great anyway. I mean, they're struggling in the league. So I was kind of earmarking this one as, like I said, a welcome change of pace. We could just cruise around in second gear. We did cruise around in second gear. It wasn't the most exciting match, but I think we got the job done, and a few people scored some goals, which should hopefully boost the confidence going into another important part of the season. It's just, non-stop, as we said before.
Yeah, well, let's get to some of the positives in the first half. I think there's, from a negative standpoint, if you want to say negative, there's maybe one thing that people are talking about, and we'll get to that in a moment. But let's just start with the goal, Phil. I mean, I really like this goal. And I think it's a goal that includes a couple of players who I think played well and hopefully, see their form rounding into shape, and then scored by a player who I think is just in top form right now. And so Martinelli beats his man, and I think it was pretty clear he could have beaten his man as many times as he wanted. He completed, I think, the most dribbles in the game. He had quite a few crosses. It was clear that if he wanted to get to the byline, he could get to the byline. Let's put it that way. It is a good cutback. And my instinct at first, as Kai is laying it off, I don't want my striker laying that off. And then I realized, no, that's actually a really brilliant layoff. And Declan Rice, who we've been saying on the pod, should shoot more. I think he is a sneaky candidate for one of our best shooters in the team. He had that curler against Villa that was just wide. He really strikes the ball beautifully, keeps his knee over it, makes really good contact, clean contact, gets it in the net. And I just think it's an aesthetically pleasing goal, a really good start. And for a team that, whatever self-doubt is in there, I mean, against Zagreb, probably not much, but whatever self-doubt is in there about, are we going to get the goal we need to win, right? It's great to get it in the second minute, and I love that goal.
It was a brilliant goal. And I think the early goal is always good because teams often start in a low block. They say, okay, if you want to come and break us down. And basically we did it with our first attack. So the strike is so clean. The technique is really clean from Declan Rice. I mean, that's a difficult one. I mean, anyone who's played football at any level will know that's not an easy technique to master. They go over the bar, they go towards the corner flag, you slice them, but he strikes through the ball so cleanly. If you look at it from behind Declan Rice as an angle, the ball doesn't move. It's just hit so nicely. So I love that bit of technique from him, the awareness from Kai to knock it back. Obviously, Martinelli had the beating of his defender all game. So it just eased a few nerves, gave us the platform for the rest of the game. I didn't really see Dinamo coming back into it, even though we tried our best to give them a couple of occasions. And like I said, it was just pure second gear. That first half, we almost fell into the trap of being so much better than them that we just took it for a joke, a bit of a ride. And I think that's where you see the Kivio era come in. That's where you see Timber overplaying with the ball a bit to try and turn away from pressure. We just considered them such an easy opposition, so non-threatening, that we lost that kind of urgency to be sharp and committed in every action, which can happen, and maybe it wasn't the best thing to watch, but I can't really find too many complaints with how we played, not only the first half, but the whole game, to be honest. Yeah,
I mean, there were a couple of sloppy errors. I think that this was a low quality game, but our quality was so much higher than theirs, from a baseline, that it didn't matter. And so, the first half, I think when you get a goal in the second minute against poor opposition, you do start dreaming of one of my 10-0s that I'm eventually going to get sometime. And that wasn't to be. And I wonder if maybe there was some frustration that started to build up just about how are we not beating these guys by more? But that's a fan reaction. The player's job is to manage your way through this game. And I think we very much managed our way through it. I don't think there's a lot of cause for frustration. I think let's try to see the stronger aspects of the performance first, though. And one of them is Martinelli. And I think he was a candidate for one of our best players on the night. I really liked Kai. I mean, Rice was fantastic. I really like Kai's performance as well. We'll come on all of them. But, we talked about the left-hand side starting to percolate a little bit more the other day when Miles and was it Leo and Marino? There was a good left-hand side action going on there. And then in this game, we already said that Martinelli had the beating of his man, but starting to do things a little instinctively. Obviously, later in the game, gets the beautiful assist to Kai with a lovely cross. What do you make of how his game is rounding into shape? Because I think there's sort of three tiers here with Martinelli. There's what we remember from 3 years ago when people like me were saying this guy's going to be one of the superstars of the game. there's maybe a low ebb where people had started to wonder, like, is he at our level? And he really has rounded off now to, I think, playing at a nice solid level. And this was a really good performance.
I thought he was really good yesterday. What I liked was the variety in his game. You know, it wasn't just him isolating himself against two wingers and then running towards the corner flag. There was an intent to come inside and maybe link some play with Jorginho or Zinchenko, who obviously play in that slight of that small half space area. There was a willingness to go to the byline. He was coming in to cross the ball, which we saw for the second goal. I think he's really added that to his game, or started to add it to his game. Obviously, we know it's a bit of an Arteta favourite to get Saka to do it from the other side. Nwaneri looks like he can do it as well. But I think Martinelli is showing that he can put in some good deliveries to that back post as well. So it was just nice to see him play with a bit of freedom and variety, because I think where Martinelli can struggle sometimes is that he looks one-dimensional. But I didn't see that yesterday. And obviously you need to take the opposition into account, but he does look more confident, more willing to do some different things, but also his defensive work rate as well. I mean, there were a few moments in the second half where he was roaring back, chasing back. There was one interception by the corner flag that sort of G'd up the crowd a bit when the atmosphere was flat. So overall, a really encouraging performance from him. And look, whether we need him on the left or the right, it's not ideal, you know, to have him on the right. But I think if we can get him playing confidently and maybe with an eye for goal as well, we certainly won't be worse off.
Yeah, I feel for all these players in some respect, Phil, because not only are they being asked to do it every 3 days, but to your point, do it from the right, do it from the left, do it with Rice as your 8, do it with Marino as your 8, do it with Jorginho as your 8, do it with Kai as your striker, do it with Jesus as your striker, do it with, you know, and like your fullback, because that's an important part of the partnership at Arsenal. Do it with an 18-year-old Miles Lewis-Skelly who's learning the role, granted, doing brilliantly, or do it with Calafiori, or do it with Timber, who's switching from right to left. And then the expectation is, hey, despite the partnerships constantly changing and the side of the pitch you're on constantly changing, and the fact that you haven't had time to train so that you can really familiarize yourself with what you're doing, and the fact that you're exhausted because you played 120 minutes in a cup tie the other day, like, be at your best, or you're going to be evaluated as being shit. Like, that's a really, really tough situation. It wouldn't surprise me if we do get this warm weather training, if we're going to have to sort of reevaluate and update our thoughts on players as we see them come back and perform quite differently, which is what we saw happen last season, by the way. When we got a bit fit, we landed on an 11 and we were able to play it more regularly. And then, you know, I think things can start to build from there, because especially as games have become more about the collective, I don't think we have the level of talent where just give it to this one player and get out of his way. You know what I mean? That might be Saka, but outside of that, we are a collective. We play a positional style, and that really relies on partnerships, connectivity, combination play. Everybody knowing, if I go here, this guy has to drop there, and if that guy drops there, I go here. I think the lack of coordination is probably impacting how we rate players on an individual basis. And you can see fatigue. For example, Timber, who I think has been one of our players of the season, just looks totally shagged out, right? And like he's
being flogged. We're using him every week, every 3 days. He's played two different positions. I mean, we're suffering so much with injuries on that right side, whether it's Ben White, Tomiyasu. We're so struggling with that side of the pitch. And I feel for him, because you can see once he gets to about 60 minutes, the legs don't work anymore. He doesn't run forward. The socks are low. You can see him stretching and feeling his calves and his hamstring. And you know, every time we get to the 65th, 70th minute, I'm worried. So I was glad that he got a bit of a rest yesterday, because, like I said, we need him. I know White is close to coming back, but he's got through such a huge amount of work, and he's not the only one. So again, maybe we need to look at it through that lens as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, another player who I think is obviously very, very important for us, and I feel good about, is Kai Havertz. You know, he has the assist for the Rice goal. He scores a goal himself. I think he had 4 shots in this game. You know, I take notes as I watch. There weren't a lot of notes that I took from this game, but Kai's name came up a lot. And I think in the desire to have an elite striker, we have started to evaluate Kai through the wrong lens of analysis and fail to appreciate his high usage, his involvement, the degree to which our performances pivot around so much of the work that he's asked to do. Pressing trigger, and we know pressing is a critical component of what we do. any central access, he has to be the wall pass or the link to make that available. He's got to get on the end of crosses, right? We cross a lot. He's got to get on the end of it. He is never going to be Sesko or Gyokeres, the fact that he doesn't have a traction engine for a left foot where he can hammer it into the corner from all angles. That's not who he is, but he does so much. And oh, by the way, he's asked to do it, to your point about minutes, 120 minutes against United, and then 90 minutes against Spurs, and then 90 minutes against Villa, and then 90 minutes against, I don't think he got 90 minutes in this game, thankfully. But so I was happy for him to get the assist in the goal. I think this now means he's ahead of last season's tally, which is so impressive. A player that, because he is not a stylish goal scorer, probably is always going to have his detractors, but in terms of overall involvement is almost certainly undervalued.
Yeah, I mean, he's ahead of last season by a considerable distance as well. Yeah. I mean, we've forgotten how well he started the season. There was that whole thing about him scoring at the Emirates 7 games in a row and stuff like that. So my issue has never really been with Kai. It's just been a lack of support or ability to rotate him out when we need it. I mean, he's played as a number 8. He's played on the right. He's played as a centre forward. And don't forget as well, being the centre forward means that you're going to get kicked, you're going to get bumped, you're going up for a lot of duels, you're pressing. It's such physically demanding work. And of course, I would like him to be a bit more convincing in front of goal, but that's just not the player we have at the moment. The player we have is a focal point, someone we can bounce off, someone that can link play. And all I want is someone to come in and help him. I don't want to replace him. I'm happy with what he offers us as a kind of tactical Swiss Army knife. But you could see that he was tired again. And I think that coincided with a poor run of form in front of goal. Mentally, you're having to go through a lot as well. I think he just became a new father as well, like Ødegaard. So there's a lot of stuff happening. We're having to use these guys a lot. Timber, the same. Havertz, the same. Even Rice was running on empty, which, you know, how often does that happen? We've just had to deal with a lot. But yesterday, scored a good goal, got a nice assist. And again, I just really, really hope that we can do something in these last few days of the window, because not only does he need help, but we need help. And I think it can give everybody a boost just to see someone come in. And it's not money, you know, it's not spending money for the sake of it. We do genuinely need help.
Yeah, I mean, because it's easy to say, oh, as we get players back, we'll be fine. There is the other thing that you could lose another player and be like dead. You know, let's say Kai got a 2 to 3 weeker like Saliba has right now. I mean, you're looking at Sterling, Leo, Martinelli front threes for 2 to 3 weeks playing in every single game. And at some point, the roof caves in, right? I mean, there is a point at which and I'm not asking anybody else to see this the way I do, and very few people do. There is a point at which I am sort of marveling at how well we're doing under the circumstances, because of the amount that these guys are being asked to play and in different positions and with no help behind them. And I acknowledge that one of the reasons we're in that position is we left ourselves short from last summer. In the countdown episode we did the other day, I asked Tim and myself, we both ranked last summer, and we sort of, you know, re-underwrote our opinions on last summer based on where we are now. But it's fair to say, whatever you think of the talent of the players we acquired, none of Sterling, Marino, or Calafiori have been a major contributor this season, which has just led to more pressure being on the players that are playing. And the player who maybe has the most pressure on him of all of them is Martin Ødegaard. Ødegaard gets his goal, thrilled for him. It's been a really weird couple of weeks, because we've seen stats like Odegaard created more chances in this game, not this game, but, you know, previous game, than any Premier League player has all season. And we've seen him have 14 chance games and 10 chance creation games. And I think he had over 1 expected assist created in this game. And you look at the data and he's doing everything for us. And yet there is a sense that he could be doing more, that he's not at his sparkling best. And I think it is definitely the case that if you ask me how we could still get to a ceiling outcome this season in the absence of Saka, one path to that is we get the elite Ødegaard season, which is definitely in him, and we've seen that. So do you find yourself marveling at what Ødegaard is able to produce at the moment, or do you find yourself maybe feeling that there's even more that we can expect of him somewhere in between? What do you think of this performance in particular?
I thought he was good. I mean, I don't think he was pivotal in us winning the game. I don't think he was amazing. But again, it's kind of what we've been saying about Timber and Havertz. He's had to play a lot of football, most likely carrying something. To be honest, I think we rushed him back a little bit. because it's not often that you come back from a 2.5-month injury and then you're put straight in to basically every game since. So that is playing on my mind as well. But also he's lost his mate. He's lost his mate Bukayo Saka on the right-hand side, where everything just looks so natural. They can take players away from each other. They've got this kind of telepathic ability to combine with those little 1-2s and tight space combinations. So we can't underestimate that. And realistically, the downgrade between Saka and what else we've had to play there, whether it's Sterling, Martinelli, even Nwaneri, who's come in and done really well, it's just a huge drop-off. And you have to take that into account. I mean, you can't not. So I am looking for him to step up a little bit more, especially in front of goal. I think he's lacked a lot of conviction in his finishing this year. We know he can score goals because what did he score? 15 non-penalty goals a couple of seasons back. So we know that that's in him. And I just think there's been a temptation to snatch at a few things, maybe not finding the right contact on a couple of easy opportunities. There was a one-on-one that he missed in the Champions League, maybe against Monaco, where he went through and put it wide. So yes, I can see a world where we are getting more from Ødegaard, and whether that's end product or just general performance levels. But also, it's so difficult to look at any player this season without seeing a lot of the external circumstances that have resulted in us just being knackered most weeks, to be honest. So I'm reluctant to be too harsh on him, although I know that there are maybe levels to go.
Yeah. I think it is important that in the process of hoping for him to hit his scintillating best, we don't overlook just how regularly good he is. You know what I mean? You have guys like Bruno Fernandes, right? Who, like, when they have a great game, boy, is it eye-catching. Go, wow, he's an amazing player. And then the 3 games you don't watch, he strolls around the pitch and he doesn't put the effort in, and he gets silly yellow cards and he gives away fouls in dangerous areas, and he's just an absolute waste of space, right? And in Ødegaard, this is the thing about, should he be captain? Shouldn't he? Of course he should be captain. He's a great captain. He's obviously Mikel's, he is the expression of Mikel in theory, laid out in praxis on the pitch, right? Of course he should be captain. And by the way, the captaincy is a thing the fans worry about more than the players anyway, because there are a lot of leaders clearly in that group. But I think part of leadership is that you go out there and you try to maintain a high level through thick and thin, through everything that's there. And, there's been some discussion that maybe he's not putting himself into the duels or the challenges in the same way. I think it is important to remember that when you suffer a bad injury, and I am no professional athlete, I know that is going to come as news to people. Apologies if that's broken your perception of me. I had a catastrophic
your ankles definitely aren't. Yeah.
Well, because I've had multiple bad ankle injuries. If you ever want to see a nasty picture, ask me about my ankle injury in Portugal. I'll be happy to send it to you. But I had a catastrophic ankle injury in college, and the body healed before the psychology did, if you know what I mean. Like, I like to play basketball, for example. Part of basketball is stopping and cutting and stopping and cutting and pushing off. And even after the doctor's been like, yep, your ankle's healed, everything's healed up, I didn't feel confident cutting off that ankle, right? I think trusting your body too when you've had a major injury, and Ødegaard has been pretty fortunate to escape injury like that. That was a bad ankle injury, a ligament injury. I personally have said I don't think he's going to be all the way fit and have all the way the range of motion and confidence in that ankle until next season, because that's just, I think, what happens with those kind of injuries. But I think there's probably a psychological impact of injury that you go through. You hear about that with ACLs all the time, that players are fit to return. They have to trust their explosiveness and their ability to plant and push off. So,
well, it's like sprinters who would be concerned about their hamstrings popping again, or defenders who have ruptured an Achilles, scared to go up for headers 10 or 15 times a game because they're landing on their Achilles all game. So it's perfectly normal that you would feel worried about that or hesitant. I just think, even duels and physicality aside, I think on the ball there is another level he can go up, but also I'm looking for him mostly to just up those numbers in the final third, because you said it's a collective. This Arsenal team has always been a collective. We've got a huge amount of end product from Rice last season. We've got a huge amount of end product from Ødegaard. Can they find those levels again as we head towards the sort of the crunch period of this season? I really hope so, and I think it would make a big difference for us.
Yeah, for sure. And I have to say, by the way, I actually think that Kai goal from the Martinelli cross, like, Martinelli should be able to deliver a cross like that regularly. He has the quality in his right foot. I really believe if we can put more crosses like that in for Kai, maybe for Marino when he's on the pitch, whatever. Like, we're going to get more goals from that. If you remember all the way back to when we first signed Kai, we had this thing where like Ødegaard and Saka putting in swingers from the right for Kai arriving at the back post, back when we thought he'd be our left 8, right? That was the theory. So now maybe Marino is meant to be that, or Rice is meant to be that. But from the left to the right, I mean, if Martinelli can cut inside, he tries to go to the byline so often because he can get there. He knows he can outsprint his man. But if he's quicker and more decisive, cutting inside and putting in crosses, I think there's more goals to come from that. And as far as Ødegaard's goal, Mikel was speaking about it, and I think sometimes things sneak out from Mikel that are more impactful than maybe you think, because he said on adding goals from midfield, we know that, and we know that in the last 2 seasons when we scored that many goals, how we shared those goals. You could guess by the reaction of Martin how much that goal meant to him. So hopefully now we go, and that's going to happen very often. That may sound like an innocuous quote, Phil, but I think there's a little bit of, information on the ball when you make a type of pass. I think there's a little extra information in that quote. Like, why would that goal matter? It's the third goal in a nothing game that we had comfortably won. You could see how much that goal meant for Martin, and now hopefully we're going to go on and add more. Like, clearly that tells me that Mikel feels maybe Martin's struggling with a bit of confidence or a bit of the reaction to how people are reacting to him. We know some of the players have come in for totally inappropriate criticism on social channels. He's had a baby. Psychologically, he's going through a lot. So Mikel clearly felt that was an important goal for Ødegaard, and maybe could be the key to something more. That, and just look where Ødegaard scores that goal, right? Crash in the box all the way down to the goal line. So I think there's a little something there in that Mikel comment, telling us where maybe Ødegaard is in his own self-belief and how this could be a boost for that.
I think it's certainly been playing on his mind. Was that his first non-penalty goal this year? Or maybe
he has none in the Premier League as far as I'm aware.
Right, okay.
Whether he has them in other competitions, I can check that while you're talking.
It's been an issue. I alluded to it earlier. He hasn't scored from open play much or if at all this season. So, and we know he can do it. We know he's got that in his locker. And I think maybe just drawing a line under that mentally can give you a bit of freedom inside the box, outside the box. Maybe if the opportunity presents itself, you'll be more willing to strike at goal, even if the conditions aren't exactly Goldilocks perfect. I think this team has struggled with that a lot. We often wait for the perfect opportunities to do things. Sometimes you just need to shoot and hit the ball. Look at Liverpool. I mean, 37 shots away at Brentford. Were they all clear-cut chances? No. Did they eventually break them down? Yes. So I feel like maybe that's a moment he needed to just feel the weight drop off his shoulders and say, oh, okay, that's one gone. Now we can kind of push on from here. And it's all important, whether it's the first minute or the 95th minute. Any goal is important, So I just think that will be a big moment for him. And I completely agree about Martinelli. If he can maintain that level of variety in his game, I think between him and Trossard, if you watch Trossard and how he plays on the left, the way he is able to receive the ball and find space is really good. And I know he can frustrate people, but the way he'll just move away from his marker a little bit, he'll pretend to go long and then come short. The way he comes off the touchline to receive the ball, Saka's really good at that as well. The classic Ben White pass where Saka comes off the touchline and then all of a sudden he's straight in on goal towards the center of the pitch. I think Martinelli can be a bit flat-footed when he's receiving the ball on the touchline. So just look at ways at how you can receive the ball, because I think if you can give the defender or the opposition fullback or whoever it is something else to think about, that buys you a yard. So yeah. I think we saw it last night, and granted, yes, the opposition was not of the highest quality, but you could see that he had the beating of him down the line. He had the beating of him coming inside. He was getting closer to goal. So that's what I just feel like with this Arsenal team. Get players close to goal and taking shots, because we don't cause enough danger or problems, which is why we've struggled so much against those mid blocks and low blocks. We're too easy to defend at times.
But it's funny how data can guide your eyes towards something that you might not pick up on otherwise, because you're right, that's his first non-penalty goal this season in any competition, which not what you expect from Ødegaard. But the irony is his expected goals per 90 in the Premier League are bang on with last season, identical. Okay,
he's had chances. He's had. Yeah. There was a video going around of like his last 20 shots. And some of them were really like good opportunities, and they went wide, blazed them over, a lot of block shots as well. So just maybe having that confidence to take on a bit more in the penalty box could really help him.
But here's the interesting thing, and I think there's information here because his expected assisted goals, XA or XAG per 90, is down substantially from last season. And for the people wondering, why are we so reliant on corners and why are we so reliant on set pieces and where's our sort of open play chance creation? Martin Ødegaard's a big part of that, right? He had 10 assists last season. He has 3 this season. And I don't know, what the open play versus non-open play breakdown of that is. But the fact of the matter is, if I had to pick one thing to come up from Martin, I'd actually say just that little extra bit of quality around the box to find players for clear chances. That's probably what we need. So the goal is great. We also want him laying it on a plate for players in that way that only he can. You think about that goal against Porto that Leo scores and the way he just takes all the defenders out of the play with that slip pass, sort of like what Miles Lewis-Skelly did for Leo against Villa, right? More of that, please. I want to talk about Sterling, not for too long. I want to talk about Ethan. And I do want to talk about transfers, of course. So with all of that still on the agenda, it is only right that I tell you about a bunch of brands. And I mean a bunch of brands. Let's be honest. You don't want to hear about 1 or 2 brands. You want to hear about as many brands as humanly possible, which is why it is my pleasure to tell you this podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp isn't just online therapy. It's therapy that happens to be online, and it is very simple. Getting access to affordable, accessible therapy is a step towards living a healthier life. So I'll give you my honest thing. Last night, laying down to go to bed, I've been surfing the internet for a minute, and I'm laying in bed, and wave of depression sank over me, a feeling of hopelessness, a feeling of sort of despair, not feeling like I could manage all the things that are on my plate, feeling overwhelmed. And these are things that you're probably familiar with if you're listening to. We all cope with these things. And, my wife's asleep, my kids are asleep. I'm laying there feeling this, and I'm thinking, I need to work through this, right? Sometimes you have the capability to work through those things on your own, and sometimes you need the help. And everyone's going through things in life. It's not that your partner or your friends aren't there for you. It's that a professional can help you find the tool set you need to work through these things so they don't hold you back. And so BetterHelp allows you to do it camera on, camera off, your choice. You can access it without having to get in a car and drive and go get it. You can match with someone that fits your needs or change if you need to, which can be awkward in a personal setting, but easier in an online setting. So, if you want to get started now with therapy, visit betterhelp.com/vision today to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/vision to get 10% off your first month. Do it now. And okay, what's next? Shopify. So Shopify is the e-commerce site that allows you to get that business that you've been thinking about launched. It's 2025. Maybe you're an artist. Maybe you are a sculptor. Maybe you do digital products. Maybe you have some kind of business that you want to start, whatever that is. E-commerce businesses are easy to start, but also easy to start poorly. So what Shopify does, it allows you to build a high-quality e-commerce site, not shite. See, the other ones are shite. This one's not going to be shite. E-commerce site where it takes care of things like managing what's in the cart and reminding people, you have a product in your cart. Do you want to check out? And taking care of taxes and shipping and payment processing. A single dashboard that lets you focus on growing your business. It lets you connect to places like TikTok Shop and Facebook Shop and Instagram Shop and all of the e-commerce shops related to the social media site. So it looks very organic. You ever been on Instagram and someone's got a product and you click and it goes right to this beautiful shop? That's how Shopify does it. A huge portion of global e-commerce is powered by Shopify, and you can find out now. Established in 2025 has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for a $1 per month trial at shopify.com/ArsenalVision, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ArsenalVision to start selling with Shopify today. Shopify.com/ArsenalVision. Do it now. And Manscaped. Basically, look, I use a Manscaped product probably at a minimum 3 times a week, whether it's the face shaver, the lawnmower. I don't use the beard hedger because I cannot grow a beard, as you can see if you're watching on YouTube. But I want to tell you about the Beard and Balls bundle. Their words, not mine. The Beard and Balls bundle includes a Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra and the Beard Hedger. You can go to manscaped.com. Use code ArsenalVision for 20% off and free shipping. Manscaped.com, code ArsenalVision for 20% off free shipping. Lawnmower 5.0. It now has the skin safe blades, but you have the dual blade head, so you can go completely smooth if that's how you choose to do it. There's a light so you can see what you're doing. It's waterproof. I always use it in the shower. The quality of these products is really high. That's the most important thing, really high. There's a travel lock, long battery life, really easy to get the job done down there. You're going to shave your privacy. You might as well do it with a purpose-built tool. And the beard hedger, 20 lengths with a zoom wheel. There is the easy ability to switch to lengths without having to change 30 different guards to get to the length you want. It has 60 minutes of runtime, an LED charge indicator, and a 30-day money-back guarantee, of course. So join the 11 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and revamp your grooming routine. The Beard and Balls bundle. Get 20% off free shipping with the code ArsenalVision at manscaped.com. Code ArsenalVision, do it now. And last but not least, this podcast is sponsored by Indeed. Indeed is a powerful hiring platform that lets you do it all. Attract, interview, and hire together. And it's basically this. Okay, with Instant Match, over 90% of employers get quality candidates as soon as they sponsor a job post, according to Indeed data. Indeed is a place you post a job, they find the job. You don't have to post on 47 different sites. You do it on one site. It is essentially simplifying a process that was otherwise very complex, which means you get more time to talk to good candidates. You get more time to hire good candidates. You get more time to run your business. Less time spent with contractors and outside people who are fleecing you for money, doing something that Indeed could do for you a lot more inexpensively and a lot more effectively. Get started right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job. Post at Indeed.com/vision. Get a $75 credit at Indeed.com/vision. Indeed.com/vision. Offered out through terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. You need Indeed. Phil, is enough of that?
Indeed.
Okay. Little rocky at the end there, but we got through it. Just the 17 and a half minutes of ad reads. Going to have to potentially pare that down, at a time when the Arsenal squad is feeling lean and slim. The ArsenalVision promotion squad needs to also be trimmed back, maybe just a little bit. Could use the beard hedger for that. Okay, so Phil, Raheem Sterling, it just sort of feels like this one is going to go the way of other loans that haven't hit, right? Like if you think of Dennis Suarez, and I don't often think of Dennis Suarez, the Dennis Suarez loan was a waste. Did not work out. Nobody was outraged about it, right? It's just like, no, didn't work out. We loaned Dennis Suarez. Didn't work out. I think the Sterling loan could have fallen in a similar bucket if it weren't for the case that we talked ourselves into the idea that Raheem Sterling could take the place of the big forward signing we needed at least for a season. You are not going to subtly acquire one of the most famous England international footballers to have played in the Premier League, who has had a sterling career, if you pardon the pun. He's just not someone who's going to fly under the radar. He comes from Chelsea. He's an England international. He's had a huge Premier League career, and he came in a position of extreme need, and we sort of allowed ourselves to dream of him having one last big season. As he said when he arrived, "You're going to see the best of me." Narrator voice. We did not see the best of him. It was another performance that I think just highlights maybe where he is right now, which is the physical gifts that led him to being one of the great players that has played in the league don't seem to be there. And so while it's not that he can't do anything, that sort of explosive change of pace and balance that allowed him to be so hard to track in the final third. He was always a bit wasteful with chances, always a bit wasteful with final balls, but in aggregate, it was fine because he caused so much devastation. It doesn't seem like the balance and explosiveness and tempo of his game are there enough to do that anymore. We really could use him to find that, but I think it's time to accept that maybe this is just where he's at in his career and stop pinning it to things like he's not trying or he doesn't care. There's a lot of anger that seems to be, a lot of the analysis about Sterling is laced with some anger, and I get it because he comes from Chelsea, and so there's always a little bit of a there, and he comes from Chelsea as an expression of what we didn't do in the market. So you know what I mean? Like he's wearing things that have nothing to do with him. And from what I understand, he's been really good with the young players, and he has essentially been a model citizen at Arsenal. But if we just strip away the emotion and look at it analytically, there's no there right now.
No, there isn't. And even after his first few appearances, I was in the back of my head thinking, but I didn't want to say it because it was early. He was acclimatizing. We were going through a bit of a rough patch, and I thought maybe towards the end of the season, he could still find a way to contribute. But with Saka injured now, with Nwaneri injured now, this was a real opportunity for him to come in and kind of stake a claim, at least in the short term. But I just think what he is able to do and what we need from a wide player just do not correlate. They don't work. They don't fit. He hasn't got the layers in his game anymore. That raw speed over the first 5 or 10 yards is gone. He doesn't have the technical quality to be able to combine with an Ødegaard or a Marino or whoever's playing in various midfield positions, whether he's left or right. I think he's a little bit hesitant in attacking areas. There have been a few occasions where he's slowed down, having been the favourite to get the ball. I think of the one at Spurs. There was a chance yesterday as well where he was running onto a knockdown from Kai that he looked favourite for again, but then wasn't the favourite. The defender got back. And I just... For me, this is a classic of the genre where you see a player come onto the scene at 17, 18 years old. They look phenomenal, but they are cooked at 30 because of the pure strain that they have put on their body. There's only so long you can maintain that level, right? He came in to that Liverpool team at 17. He was putting up stupid numbers with Sturridge and Suarez 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, 12 years ago. So he was so obviously not first choice. He was so obviously a late kind of supermarket sweep. Oh God, this is the only thing that we've got left available. Mikel, you know him. Can you maybe get something out of him? Do Chelsea want him? No, let's get him in. So it was so obviously not what we wanted to do over the summer, but I thought maybe there was still enough in him and those legs to be able to contribute a little bit. Unfortunately, it hasn't looked that way. It doesn't look like that way. And it's just, it's a shame. It's a shame because it could have worked, but it hasn't. I'm not particularly angry at anyone about it. It was a gamble that hasn't paid off. And I think the real issue was us not maybe getting our main targets earlier on in the window. But in terms of who Sterling is at the moment, I think he's got 6 months to start learning Arabic, buddy.
As the meme goes. Yeah.
Because no one's going to take him in the Premier League after this. Even to go to like a Palace or a Brentford or someone like that, I don't think he's got it. He has not got it anymore. So Al Ain, Al Hilal, Al Ali, they're your guys.
Take a pick. Take a pick.
And I think someone will come in over the summer and do Chelsea a big favour because I think he's contracted until 2027. So they'll be looking at any way to get him out, whether it's contract termination, whether it's just, please get off our books, basically.
Yeah, I think this is one where if we are able to remove the emotional investment in what we were hoping he could provide and just look at it logically with what our eyes are showing us, players have qualities that they bring to the pitch, things that they're good at and things they're less good at. And Sterling is maybe the apotheosis of a player who had clear flaws in his game that have always been there, but the strengths in his game were elite to a level that were right at the top of the game. And you're not going to ask him at this stage of his career for his weaknesses not to be there. They've always been there. What you're asking for is a little glimmer of some of the elite top-end skills that he had that were unique. And those don't seem to be there. And that means you're left with a player that doesn't have a hell of a lot to give. Because, if you take an all-arounder, you know what I mean? A guy who's all-around solid, maybe their level drops a little, but they
James
still...
Milner.
Yeah, James Milner, right? All around. But that's not who Sterling was. And so you need some of those elite qualities to shine through, and they're not at the moment. And that is that's a problem because it means we don't have a lot to go on. But I have the silver lining for all the people that say, oh, we're toxic positivity podcast. Well, here comes your toxic positivity. The positivity is this. I think it could be great for Arsenal that we just regard Sterling as a failed loan and we stop investing minutes in him. If what it means is we just acknowledge Ethan Nwaneri isn't going to be a better player than Sterling someday. Ethan Nwaneri is better than Sterling today. I'm not saying prime Sterling, I'm saying current Sterling. And that is a reason for Mikel to invest the minutes in Nwaneri. I think what I would say is this. For as long as we need, for as many games that we have remaining where Sterling might have played, just play Ethan. Just play Ethan. And maybe we win the Champions League and the Premier League this season. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I think that is the most likely outcome. I think both of those things are still possible. But whatever we do this season, if the Sterling minutes just get shifted to Ethan, A, I think you're going to get a higher level of performance because I think he's a better player today than Sterling is. But B, you are massively investing in a very bright future for next season and beyond. Much in the same way that these Miles Lewis-Skelly minutes he's been playing this season have taken him from player none of us thought would play in the Premier League to guy we're now thinking of as a future star. What Miles Lewis-Skelly has done in terms of our estimation of him is transformative. We already think very highly of Ethan. There's two outcomes here. You play Ethan a lot this season, and he goes through some struggles because he's a young player, but he comes out the other side better for it. Or there's the outcome where he just ducked to water, similar to Miles Lewis-Skelly, and he's great, and you get 5 goals and 4 assists from Ethan down the stretch, and it leads to the season still having something very exciting on. So for me, this was another really exciting Ethan cameo, Phil, and I'm at the point where what I would say is the silver lining to Sterling kind of showing he ain't it, is that you just let these minutes be Ethan's minutes for the balance of this season. There's a lot of upside to doing that.
Yep, I completely agree. I've got no issue with him coming into the team and playing. I wrote about him in August, actually, Nwaneri, and I said...
You're taking Tim's role on the pod now?
Yeah,
I wrote about this.
You need to make your opportunities count. And I said, look, if Kobbie Mainoo was a good blueprint for him, because he was impressing in preseason, but then he got injured, so that kind of put his development on hold for a little bit. But once he was available, Ten Hag was playing him all the time because he offered something to their, something different to their aging, clumsy midfield options. And I don't think we've got aging, clumsy wide options, but he is making an impact when those other guys aren't. And I think you need to reward that. It was quite clear that with the loan of Fabio Vieira, they were valuing his minutes and development over anybody else. And I think Arteta needs to lean into that. I think he has lent into that. He offers some sort of skills and qualities that are at least analogous to what Bukayo Saka used to offer us before we got injured, in terms of that ability to cut inside, maybe fire off a shot. He's got that cross to the back post. He can go to the byline as well. I trust him technically a bit more than I do Sterling and Martinelli on that side, in terms of, can he combine with Ødegaard? Can he bounce off a Havertz? And it's not always going to be perfect. Games are going to pass him by sometimes, but I am a million times happier investing our minutes and games into him than I am with Sterling at this point, because I've seen enough of him to know that it's not going to change. And I think Nwaneri can genuinely contribute this season when we've lacked options on that right side. So I thought it was a really bright cameo from him yesterday. He should have set up Declan Rice with that goal. I mean, he heads it wide. That's the one that he'll be thinking about in his sleep. I'm sure that was a certain goal. And I just like the way he plays, the stature, the presence he has on the pitch. I think Lewis-Skelly has that quality as well, maybe a bit more obviously. But Nwaneri never looks phased. He's always happy to welcome the ball. And completely agree. He's the guy we should be investing in right now. And the injury was a bit of a shame, but thankfully it wasn't one that kept him out for too long. And I'm happy to invest in him moving forward until we get Saka back. He
looks really good. I mean, do you think there's an argument that I know that he's a midfielder, he's an 8, that's where he's played, but is that wrong? I mean, is he a right wing? Like right wide forward, like he just looks like whatever such a we need Saka him to analog. Be. Yeah, fair enough. He's what we need him to be. But I mean, future, so many things Saka does well, he does well. You know what I mean? And I think he's one of those players similar to Saka, where if he wants to get onto his left foot and beat you, he's going to. Iron Robin had that thing, right, where you knew he was going to put it on his left foot, and you'd watch football and you'd be like, why do they let him put it on his left foot? But he always got it on his left foot, and he always got that shot into the left corner. Ethan has a little of that. He was really good again in this performance. I love watching him. He is very rarely peripheral. We've seen a few performances. I think maybe at Newcastle he came on and struggled to influence the game, but especially when he's out wide, we very, very rarely see him fail to influence the game.
He's someone that when he's on the ball in and around the penalty box, you kind of sit up in your seat a little bit. You hold your breath because you expect something to happen, and it might not happen always. There's going to be shots that fly over the bar, but there are also going to be shots that sail into the top corner like they did against Preston. So it's just a quality that not many players have, and to have it at 17 years of age at this level is pretty special. So I think for all the struggles and the suspensions and the injuries and the bad results we've had this season, to find Lewis-Skelly and Nwaneri, wow. I mean, we're so lucky, guys, to to have them ready to go at their age.
Yeah, it's insanely helpful to have that, and it makes the job a lot easier. What we have to do, which we still have to do. There is one last thing though. And by the way, Ethan should have had an assist. That Rice header is dreadful, and he knew it. But that's a brilliant delivery. I mean, that's one of the things we miss with Zach outright is that curled right foot, left foot delivery, curled right. You know, it's the inverse of what Martinelli did for Kai. You want that from both sides. I that was fantastic. So we'll see how much playing time he gets in the near future. I imagine it'll probably be a lot. There was one more thing in this game, and I think it's the most nervous I was during this game. And I was pretty nervous. And it was when Butler Ødegaard was standing on the touchline waiting to come out.
Oh man, I felt so. I was anxious. Like watching the clock, the ball went out a couple of times, and I was like, "Come on!"
I know the rule. You don't make subs during a defensive corner routine. But we had 2 corners to defend, and I'm like, Mikel, just put him on. Just put him on. I really wanted the players just kick it out in the touch so he could come on. He could have gotten like 6 or 7 minutes. As it turns out, I think he winds up getting around 2. I mean, obviously, look, I don't think he's someone who is set for a long-term Arsenal career. I imagine his career will be elsewhere.
No, he's not.
But if you tell an 8-year-old, which I think is when he joined Arsenal, that you will step out onto the pitch in a Champions League fixture in front of the Emirates faithful as your debut, you've made it. You've made it. We in a world where we're talking about the Ethan Nwaneris and Maslow Skellies of the world who are on a different trajectory, what it means for Butler Ødegaard and his family to be there and see him step out onto that pitch wearing an Arsenal shirt and a Champions League tie. Brilliant. I was very anxious. I was worried at one point because, in the Champions League, they don't let it go even a second over. Sometimes they blow a couple seconds early. But yeah, great for him. Great moment for him and his family.
Yeah, it's a lovely moment. And like you, I was thinking, oh God, every set piece, every corner, every time the ball went out, I was thinking, right, can you please just put him on now? Because I think he was standing there for 3 or 4 minutes. And Ødegaard scored before he came on as well. And that was in the 91st minute. So, really, really nice moment for him. And look, I don't think he's got a long-term future at the club. I think he'll probably look to move on this summer. But he scored a lot of goals for Arsenal at various youth levels. He's clearly got something. And I just hope he goes on to have a really successful career. But no one can take that moment away from him. He will always have that. And what he had last night was 1,000,000 times more than what most people will have. So good for him. That was years of hard work and sacrifice in a 2-minute cameo, but completely worth it. And another nice moment for him and for us as a team and a club.
By the way, did you pick up on this quote? I think there were quotes before this match where Mikel referenced like laws in terms of wanting to give Max Dauman a chance. And I guess like maybe legally as part of the UEFA laws, he can't. But is Max Dauman 14? Has he even turned 15 yet?
I think he's just turned 15.
Okay, so he's 15. For the manager to reference him at all and wanting to give him a chance, like it certainly does nothing to slow down the hype machine that's quietly building about this player's future.
He's coming. I mean, I've watched a lot of him in the youth league already, and he's playing as a 14-year-old against 19 and 20-year-olds, and he doesn't look out of place. I mean, people know about him. There's maybe a moral aspect to this in that you don't want to talk about them so much because of purely how young he is. I mean, 14, 15 years old, we shouldn't be talking about players that young, but sometimes there's only so much of a secret you can keep, and he is very close to being on the Nwaneri track. I think whether that's a Premier League appearance here or there, he's already training with the first team. He looks pretty special at the UEFA Youth League level. I think he's played in the FA Youth Cup now. He's coming. I mean, it's just a matter of time before he's involved.
I think there's a really important point there too. Once upon a time, you could keep these things secret. Now there are no secrets. And here's the risk. If you try to keep them secret or don't hype them up, I know Clive says he doesn't like to talk about young players of that age. And I totally understand ethically. And we don't want to be guilty of doing too much of that. But here's the problem. If you're a manager of your club and you don't talk about them, you don't talk them up, you don't give them the sense that they have a path, you lose them. To a club, you look what happened with Cheeto right this summer, to a club that's willing to pay a decent amount of money for them and convince them that they have a brighter future. Now, Cheeto, I don't know that his future's any brighter at United, where they've got a bunch of lumps at striker and probably more lumps coming, where we don't own a striker, essentially, other than Kai, who's a hybrid striker. So my point is you almost have to hype them up and give them the sense that they have a career with you for fear of losing them. And the quotes that I mentioned, by the way, these are from the day before or maybe just before the game. He said, quote, he's very impressive. At his age as well, some of the things he does in training are unbelievable. He's a player with huge talent. We have a lot of belief that we can develop him to become one of our own. He's doing very well so far. At the moment, with all the legislation, there are a lot of restrictions for your age, something that in other countries you don't even mention. We'll have to wait and see. He's taking very fast steps because every time you put him in a different challenge, a different level, he overcomes that hurdle really quickly, which is great. And I think this is one of the deciders of the youth talent that really goes on to be amazing is, okay, you can dominate at U14, dominate at U16. If you step up an age group, can you still dominate? And I think with Cheeto, for example, you'd see Cheeto scored 7 goals in a game, and then he'd step up and play at a higher age level and actually get bodied a little bit and struggle. And the question with him was he just dominating physically because he'd advanced physically past the other kids? With Dauman, I think you're seeing the talent is there regardless of what age range. The players have spoken about him too. So one to keep an eye on. I will say this. I tend not to get too worked up about losing or not losing academy talent. Like when Cheeto went, so be it. Not super.
It happens.
Yeah. This is one the club is going to have to do everything in their power for. So we'll see what happens there. And like I said, we don't want to be guilty of talking about players at that age level too much, but Mikel's talking about it. The players are talking about it. It's in the news, and he's coming. So, we have to be aware of it. You know who's not coming? Signings.
Smooth.
I don't know how else to lay this one on you, Phil, but I am in the headspace right now on January 23rd that I don't think we're going to make a signing. And I know that's going to absolutely do people's head in, but like there are players you go for and there are players that you don't waste your time on. Let's take them in order. First of all, Cunha, give me your sort of 60-second you would take or wouldn't take Cunha, what you think of him, and then the situation itself on whether you think there's a chance of it happening.
I think there's definitely a chance of it happening, and I would take him. He's a player I've liked for a long time. I think he's been probably a standout performer in the Premier League, not just at Wolves, but in the Premier League in general over the last 18 months. He's a super player, can carry the ball. He likes to shoot, which we like, as we spoke about before. I think he's got a good bit of physicality about him. There's versatility in where he can play, whether it's off the left as a support striker, as someone leading the line as a false nine. For me, it depends on the numbers. I think the relationship is basically broken down between him and Wolves now. They'll be reluctant to lose him because, let's be honest, they're still in a relegation fight. But if that relationship has broken down and there's a way for us to maybe sneak in, I would absolutely do it, because I think realistically we need 3 forwards. So if we can get one now and then leave ourselves 2 in the summer, I would do it. So if it's creeping towards £80 million, no. If it's around 50 or maybe up to 60, then I would do it. I think he's a super player, but the numbers have to be right.
Positionally, do you prefer him in sort of like an advanced midfield role, a false nine, off the left, a little bit of all of them, which is the attraction?
I think the ability to do all of that is the attraction. The issue is at Wolves, he's been given a lot of freedom because he's just a million times better than everybody else. So he kind of is allowed to do whatever he wants on the pitch, whether that's dropping deep, drifting over to the left, going out to be the last man running in behind. He won't have that much freedom at Arsenal, but I think part of that versatility will appeal. And like I said, I think we need a couple of players, maybe up to 3 different forward options over the next 6 months. So if we can get one in now, I'd be happy with that.
Yeah. I have to admit, I don't think it's going to happen. I think Wolves will get him to sign a new and improved deal with a reasonable get out of jail free clause in the summer. But the value of staying in the Premier League is too much.
Agreed.
Vis-a-vis whatever they could get in the transfer market. And I think you could argue that the teams below them are worse and that they still would stay up. And I think there's a strong argument for that. I mean, when you're looking at teams like United and Spurs, they're going to be the one. No, I'm kidding. But you get it. Like Leicester, Ipswich, and Southampton probably all wind up going down. But if Ipswich gets a little frisky, which is one of the 3 of them I could see that happening with, maybe, Wolves without Cunha just find, that they slip. I mean, there was a little bit of a new manager bounce. That's ebbed away. They play us next, so hopefully it really ebbs away. But do you think that's the issue? I mean, I don't think a team that's that close to the drop can afford to lose an important player right now.
Normally, no. And that was my point. I think I made it earlier in January. I just didn't see it because they seemed to be on good terms. They had won their first 2 games under Vitor Pereira. There was talk of a new deal that was very close to being signed. So for me, it just felt impossible. And obviously we had Gabriel Jesus, who was very similar stylistically to him in terms of playing, as a false nine kind of striker on the left. But a couple of things have changed since then. So maybe there might be an opening. And it's not just us interested in him, by the way. There's Forest, Spurs, Chelsea, Newcastle have been linked as well. So I think if there is an opening, we certainly won't be the only ones sniffing around if we are actually interested. I mean, maybe we're not, but we have been linked.
Yeah. And so look, I think I'd probably do it. And I think your point about the money is this. I think he is the +1 to a big attacking signing in the summer. I don't think we need just one. I think we need 2. Sterling will obviously go. Maybe Leo gets another year on his contract and he sticks around for a little while longer, but either way, his future is short there. You look at the attacking group and it's Saka, Martinelli, Kai, and that's it. If Leo goes, if Sterling goes, and Jesus is functionally not here, it's Saka, Martinelli, and Kai. That's it. And Ethan, if you want to put him in that group, but Ethan might even be viewed longer term as a midfielder and preferred to be played there. Saka, Martinelli, and Kai are the forwards, with Ethan kind of floating around that group. That's obviously not going to cut it. Adding Cunha to that still doesn't make it enough for the level we want to get to. There's got to be another. So I don't mind Cunha as the guy and then go big in the summer for one more. He can't be the guy, which is why you can't spend 85. Look, maybe we have limitless money and we spend 85 on him and 120 on someone in the summer, and what the hell do I know? But I think if you're going to go near that 100 range for anybody, it should be a forward at this point. But I don't think it should be this forward. So would I do it? Probably. But I think it's the and one move. You're just doing the and one before the one, if that makes sense.
I agree.
Yeah. By the way, some outgoing news. It looks like Zinchenko is going to go to Dortmund maybe this window. I think it's a good move for him. Oh, yeah? I'm a little surprised only in the sense that Miles is going for a knee scan. We don't know what the results of that be. Hopefully it's nothing. Calafiori can't stay fit. Tomiyasu can't stay fit. It's Miles Lewis Skelly. Tierney is pre-agreement with Celtic, but I guess maybe going to stay the balance of the season, but also doesn't play fullback the way we ask our fullbacks to. Timber can only play so many minutes. Could you make an argument that we're just not in a great position to lose anyone from the group period right now?
No, I think we always had the capability to lose Kiwior or Zinchenko this window, to be honest. And I think if Dortmund, I don't know what the reports are, if there's a loan plus obligation or loan plus option, or whether they're going to buy him outright. I'm not sure. But that link has been bubbling away in the background, and I think it was dependent on whether they signed Renato Vega or not from Chelsea. But now he's going to Juventus, so I think they're pushing the big red button on Zinchenko. I mean, he'd look like Andrea Pirlo in the Bundesliga. So I don't have any concerns about his quality. Dortmund have struggled a bit this year. They've just fired Nuri Sahin. But honestly, it sounds like Tierney wants to go. And Arsenal may have been tempted to let him go in January. Obviously, if he's signing a pre-contract, then he'll go in the summer. But I would much prefer to keep him around for the rest of the season, because I think he's given us some good cameos and also offers something a bit different stylistically from left back in terms of being a bit more willing to push forward on the overlap, that traditional style of play. I think he's put in a couple of really good crosses recently. So I don't think we need Zinchenko, Kiwior, Tierney, Calafiori, and Lewis Skelly. I think we could afford to lose one of Kiwior or Zinchenko. If there's money on the table for Zinchenko, or potential money for Zinchenko on the table in terms of a future fee or an option or an obligation, I've got no issue with us taking that. Yeah.
From a striker standpoint, Benjamin Sesko is definitely a player we'd admired. We looked at in the summer, and apparently we're looking at again. Another one where Red Bull have been very unequivocal, at least in their statements. We're not selling him this window. Red Bull are not easy to do business with. They do release clauses. They want it all paid in a lump sum. They're not a pay it in 27 installments kind of place. They're not a loan with an option. You want their player, you buy their player full fare with the money up front. Not the way we necessarily want to do business, and not the easiest way to do business. Doesn't seem like they want to let him go. They also have a top 4 battle on their hands and a chance to reach the Champions League again next season, which is where they want to be. And he's an important part of that. an interesting debate has broken out because they both played at the same time yesterday, and Sesko scored a goal. A tap in, but a goal nonetheless. Not his usual fare, which is usually 37-yard screamer into top bins. Gyokeres did score a screamer into the top bins after a burst of pace and a left-footed shot beautifully placed into the top corner. And there's been this interesting debate breaking out, at least in our Discord. There was, Gyok versus Sesko. It's a tough one. Sesko, pedigree-wise, is aligned more to what you'd think of as a star, right? He's young, playing in the Bundesliga at a young age and starting to really show his stuff in the Bundesliga and the Champions League, whereas Gyokeres was at Coventry. He did well in the Championship, but not as well as some other young stars in that division who also didn't necessarily go on to impress. Now he's doing it in Portugal, where we know the record of Portuguese star striker type players is very mixed leaving that league. Obviously, I'm a huge Darwin Nunez guy, which people ridicule me for, but like Jackson Martinez, Bas Dost, like there's been other players like that. But the Bundesliga has a bit of a spotty record with attacking players as well, just as Timo Werner, how it's going. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how do you appraise that? You have one guy who's in the middle of his prime, putting up insane numbers, and I think more well-rounded. Another young player who can kick the crap out of the ball, maybe a little less in his game, but has more of the pedigree that you'd look for in a higher career trajectory. Do you have an evaluation of the difference between those two?
Look, I mean, you don't need to convince me about Gyokeres. I said I would sign him in my DOF pod that we did that time. Mm-hmm. And this was kind of before people were starting to look at him as a genuine top or elite level striker. I saw a lot in him in the Championship, that we would like and would benefit from in terms of that physical presence up front, the ability to lead the line. He also hits the ball very hard. My only concern with him is that he'd cost a fortune, and the sample size is not huge in terms of the elite level, the highest level. And I think if the numbers are between 80 and 100 million, we would be gambling quite significantly on him. Don't forget there's 6 years between him and Sesko. So that's a lot of time. That's a lot of minutes. That's a lot of development different between the two. I don't think we've ever been interested in him, to be honest. I think if we were interested in him, there would have been a lot more noise. I think the true target has been Sesko. We wanted him last summer. I think we've been following him for a lot longer than that. And he is the one that I think Arsenal would pull the trigger on if it was available, or if they could do it this month. Sorry, I don't think he is available. I think it would have to be a Cunha-esque situation of Sesko looking to force a move. But I think everything has been done very cordially with him and RB Leipzig in terms of the new contract. His development has been very thought out because he's obviously come through the Salzburg system. He went to Liefering on loan. So I think he is the guy that Arsenal would pull the trigger on if they could. But I'm not denying that at this moment in time, Gyokeres is probably the more rounded striker. But that's to be expected. So are any of them moving this month? I'm very inclined to say no. But if I had the choice, I would probably lean towards Sesko, even though I think Gyokeres right now is the better player.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you want to get all economics on it, you could say, buying a 26, 27-year-old player for 100 million, you're not going to be able to sell him. So, you can't recoup anything and he's not going to develop. Whereas Sesko, blah, 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 blah. Look, the one thing we have learned, buying players that don't work out is never the better value. I think there is a lower chance of Gyokeres being a flop, so to speak, because I just think he has enough in his game than Sesko, who has less in his game currently. But I do agree with you that, like, if you're going to roll the dice, Sesko's age and profile and trajectory looks like where you'd want to roll the dice. I think in terms of, like, let's put it this way. If they were loan moves for half a season, you'd loan Gyokeres right now, not Sesko, because I think Gyokeres could do more right away. But from a trajectory standpoint, I'm with you. And I certainly don't fault anyone who has the opposite view. I think I'll even say this. Gyokeres impressed me when we played them. He did. I know he didn't do much, but like we've seen Erling Haaland look pretty blunt against Saliba and Gabriel at times. I thought he found a way to get, Clive says the good players find the dope, so to speak, right? He found ways to find the players he could run off of. There was the one on Kivior, like he he did a good job finding the places where he could impact the game and nearly did. And I think in a really difficult game for Sporting, he was definitely the bright spot for them. And again, another difficult game, this Red Bull game, where who were they playing? They weren't playing against Red Bull. They were
Sporting Red Bull.
Who were was it Sporting versus Red Bull? Were they playing against each other? Yeah. That's why. Okay, good point. Obviously, watching the Arsenal game, I only sort of saw highlights, but like even in a game where they were struggling a bit, I mean, that goal is individual. Just I'm going to run this guy. I know where I'm going to put it. The one thing they both have in common is when they kick the ball, it stays kicked. I think you can wind up in a dangerous situation where you're so desperate for something that you will accept anything. But I don't think we'd be alone in admiring Sesko. Again, another one I don't know that can come this window.
Do you really think that's it? We're not gonna bring anyone in?
I don't. Look, that is not going to make me popular with people listening. And by the way, if you're listening and you're like, you're a jerk, I'm not saying it's what I want. I'm telling you right now, I'm looking around the landscape. I see the players we like. I think we like the right players. I don't know that those players can be gotten right now. So I don't want us to get the wrong player. I don't think anyone wants another Raheem Sterling type loan signing, right? Like Vlahovic on loan. I mean, he's a body and he can do some stuff. We scouted him. I think there's more to him than maybe popular perception. I wouldn't want him long term. If you said we're gonna pivot off of Sesko and Cunha and sign Vlahovic long term because that's what we can get. Like, no, I don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to, because first of all, like it all feels pretty dire right now. But there is a world where Ethan plays brilliantly. We stay relatively healthy. We go on a warm weather training camp after the Newcastle Cup tie. We get 10 days of rest. We come back looking good, and we make a good fist of it this season. And maybe even Saka comes back. That could happen. I certainly wouldn't want to pivot off players we like to players we don't like just to make a signing. So, yeah, if we can get the guys we like, obviously get them. If you can loan Vlahovic for this season, like I'd probably be okay with that. But I don't want to sign guys we don't like just to make a signing. And we may be in that territory, don't you think?
I just would find it so difficult to believe us not bringing someone in to help Havertz. I think we are in big danger of running him into the ground this year. And I don't think we need a wide player this month, to be honest. I think we've seen enough from people that we can maybe cope. But to not bring another centre forward in would be incredible. And to be honest, I felt like that over the summer and we brought in Sterling. But I would just be amazed if we don't bring in someone to help us because we've needed it so obviously throughout the whole month. And we've given them a lot of grace. But to be hesitant over the summer and then to have an option to bring someone in January and not act again, even on loan, would be risky and honestly quite disappointing because I don't think we are giving ourselves the best chance to compete for the second half of the season.
So first of all, if this was Discord after you said, I can't believe the club will do blank, you'd be hit with 40 versions of the Usher watch this meme gif, right? That's where you'd be living.
Watch this.
But I would say it like this. Like, let's say Sesko and Cunha are the guys we want, and we're willing to do them both this window. If the clubs aren't willing to sell him this window, either
of course,
then you are.
I would hope that the club have more than two strikers on their list.
Well, you can't do a Premier League loan because we're thanks to Neto and Sterling, we're over that. I don't think Sterling has a cancellation clause, so maybe you can cancel Neto, or you could just buy Neto outright for pocket change and then loan a Premier League player. The alternative is a loan from overseas. And like Vlahovic would be one that I could see Juve want to do that. They just signed Kolo Muani. So maybe a Vlahovic loan is the place to invest some hope. And if you want to see our scouting video on him, I think there's more to him than meets the eye. But Phil, like, you know what craters a project? Buying a forward you don't really want. Like that, we don't do that.
Completely.
So like, look, with the Jesus injury, we are in a position of got to do something. I agree. I don't want the something to be buy a guy we don't like and don't need long term. So if you can find a loan, an international loan like a Vlahovic, I'd probably do it because you're just in the position of you have to. I mean, as annoying as it sounds, if we crash out of the League Cup, we are in a situation of warm weather training for 10 days, no Champions League in February. Things start to heat up again in March and April, but maybe a Saka comes back and Ethan's fit and it all feels a little different because you can wind up in a situation like with the Sterling loan where you get the wrong guy in and like the manager just can't use him. He's not integrated. He's not trusted. He's not at the level. And yeah, he's a body, but he's a body you're playing in like stoppage time of 3-0 victories. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think we needed a striker or a forward anyway this month. So to have lost Jesus on top of Saka and
no
to
one
not bring anybody in would be
no. Find him for me. Can you find him for and then
we've
tell
been
Arsenal?
linked with that striker from Botafogo as well, Igor Jesus. No, for me that's a big no. That seems like agent talk. But there
what would
must
the work
be
permit situation
around.
even be? I mean, could he come work right away? Is he in the Brazil national team?
He's played for the national team. Yeah,
so he'd probably get the exceptional talent visa or whatever it is. And
yeah, but I don't know. I just think beyond Sesko or whoever they've had as kind of the main targets, this is their job to kind of identify players who would be available and gettable in January.
Can I give you the head loss outcome of all head loss outcomes where we will have to just shut down the podcast and all go do something else for a living? We sign no one. And on deadline day, there's a Sky Sports reporter standing outside of Molineux saying, standing outside of the City Ground saying, and it's official, Cunha is now
club
a
record
Forest
fee
player for Nottingham Forest at £50 million. They've made him a record sign.
And then Havertz pulls up a week later. Yeah.
Kai Havertz turns up with 2 walking boots on.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Like when Szczesny broke both of his arms that time.
I don't think the Josh Kroenke mural would stay under the tunnel for much longer.
God, yeah.
It's a bit cringe, isn't it? Look, all right, well, so just finally, it's Wolves at the weekend. We're not going to preview it except to say defensively, they looked a bit of a shambles against Chelsea. Cunha doesn't seem like he's too happy. We'll see if he's in the lineup. I mean, sometimes you get performances out of players in that situation where they want to show you they're worth it. Sometimes you just don't get a performance at all. Any team in the Premier League can be dangerous, and away to Wolves, their fans can get really behind the team. But based on how they look defensively, Phil, this has to be 3 points.
It needs to be. They are hugely short in terms of quality at the back. I mean, it's been an issue all season. I know they've brought in Agbadou from Reims, I think, so that's something to kind of bolster them a bit. But they're garbage at the back, and I think they've got players who can hurt you further forward, whether it's Hwang or Strand Larsen. Obviously, Cunha is a big threat. Nelson Semedo and Aït-Nouri can contribute from the wing-back areas, but we are quite simply a better team than them. I think the new manager bounce has worn off a little bit. They haven't won any of their last 4 after winning their first 2 under Vitor Pereira, so I would be hugely disappointed to not come away from this game with 3 points, and I think it's a game we need to win. So if we're on it, we should have too much for them.
Yeah, and whatever pressure we think we can keep on Liverpool, they host Ipswich this weekend, so that's 3 points. You got to keep it on now, because then they go into that run of at Bournemouth, at Everton, hosting Wolves, at City, hosting Newcastle, hosting Southampton, at Villa. The run from February to March for them, and they've got a bunch of cup ties in there. Like it's a little bit tricky. Then they're in their one little tricky run. Then it smooths out for them. Then a really tricky run in at the end. So keep pace with them with the Ipswich game this weekend. Then we obviously have City. And let me tell you something. If City have reloaded with a bunch of signings and we have to play them when they're back on the up after the way they look right now, I mean, PSG tear them apart after being 2-0 up. They lose 4-2. They are a shambles at the moment. Can they stay a shambles? Like, we played them before they were a shambles this season with 10 men. Are we going to play them after they're a shambles this season? I cannot accept that. They need to stay a shambles for that game. They owe us one shambles City performance. But I'll take a win over them and we can get it. You know what? There'll be plenty of time to talk about that. Let's leave it there. That's plenty for this one. Like I said, we'll probably do some scouting tomorrow. I will tell you, we have scouted Sesko. We have scouted Gyokeres. We have not scouted Cunha yet, but we have scouted those two. If Bradley Barcola interests you, we have scouted him. I know he was getting some chat from people based on his performance yesterday. We scouted Vlahovic. There's a lot of scouting videos available to you, whether you're an Apple subscriber or a Patreon subscriber. So we'd love to have you there. And remember, if you use code AVP, it's $2.50 for that first month to see what you think. So worth a shot if you want to try it. Otherwise, just happy to have you here. And again, my apologies to patrons who found my tone too morose, too down in the dumps after an easy 3-0 win in the Champions League yesterday. My apologies. I will lift myself, but it is fixture congestion, isn't it? Phil, thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, always good to talk to you, man. You got a Football Vision pod coming out today, I believe, as well.
I do, yeah. I'm going to edit it as soon as we finish here. It's about Lyon and what the hell has happened there, basically, because they are a huge mess.
Drunk owner.
With an American at the helm, so we know how that goes.
Drunk American owner, basically the same as the Arsenal Vision podcast. Look, the fact that you said you're going to edit it just shows that your professionalism far exceeds mine, so we'll leave it there. My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me everywhere, Gunner. And actually, if you're on Blue Sky, we're actually at ArsenalVisionPodcast.com on Blue Sky. So, just another handle to have to remember in a sea of handles. We love you. And we will talk to you after Arsenal 10. Wolves nil.